The saloon dozed in the heat. Afternoon sun pressed down on Red Creek so hard even the flies were lazy. The only sound inside the last drink was the slow creak of a ceiling fan and the murmur of 5 hard men at the bar, drinking loud, laughing louder, the kind of laughter that always came before trouble. Jake Morrison and his outfit. Their names traveled ahead of them like dust on the wind. Wanted posters in 3 territories, reward money in all of them. Rustlers, stage robbers, killers who'd never had to explain a thing to any judge. Men who took whatever they fancied and left nothing behind but fear and bodies. In the far corner sat one more soul. Alone. Quiet. A man with a gray beard and a face carved by years of wind and bad roads. 55, maybe, though the lines made him look older and the eyes made him look older still. He sat slumped over a glass of cheap whiskey, as if he'd grown into that corner and never left it. No one paid him any mind. In a room full of danger, he was the safest thing to ignore. A piece of furniture. A habit. A nobody. Martha Hayes came out from behind the bar with a tray balanced on her palm. 62. Hair pulled back in a stubborn bun, hands a little shaky but smile still warm. She'd been pouring drinks and listening to stories in this building longer than most men in town had been alive. For 2 decades she'd served loggers, drifters, cowpunchers, gamblers, and the occasional outlaw. They tip her when they could, respected her when they had sense, and every man in Red Creek would have stepped between her and trouble, if trouble hadn't arrived wearing 5 guns and a grin. She slid the tray onto the bar. Jake's hand shot out. His fingers clamped around her wrist, iron and cruelty in equal measure. Service is slow, Granny, he drawled. What's wrong with you? Joints all locked up? Brain gone soft? Or are you just too old to move before sundown? His gang exploded into laughter. Not the light kind that follows a decent joke. The ugly, sharp kind that strips dignity off a person. The laugh of men who'd never been held to account, who believed the world existed to be kicked, broken, and looted. Martha tried to twist free, pain flashing across her face. Please, she whispered. I'll bring your drinks quick as I can. Just let go. Please. Jake parroted that last word in a high, shaking voice. Please, he sniveled, pretending to cower. Listen to the old hag begging. He leaned closer, breath sour with whiskey. You're pitiful. This town's pitiful. Soft. Weak. All of you deserve whatever we feel like taking. His men cackled, pounding the bar with their fists. And then a new sound cut through their noise. Not a shout. Not a gunshot. 5 small, heavy thuds on wood. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bullets. They landed on the bar beside Jake's half-empty glass, each one set down as carefully as a coin on a church collection plate. The laughter faltered, fluttered, then died. The old man from the corner had moved without anyone seeing. He stood beside them now, close enough to smell their sweat, close enough that a quick hand couldn't clear leather without touching his coat. He didn't look at Jake, or Martha, or anyone else. He stared at the bullets. 5 bright little promises on the scarred plank. Hey, Jake snapped, shock turning to anger. What's this, old-timer? You lose your mind along with your teeth. Silence stretched. Long, heavy. Mean. When the gray-bearded stranger finally spoke, his words were soft enough to make the room lean in. 1 apiece, he said. Decide. You can walk out now, or we can load him. Either way, these 5 get used. Your choice is whether it's in your guns, or in your heads. Jake barked a laugh, but it came out thin. You threatening us? You, he sneered. You're barely standing, Grandpa. He met the old man's eyes, and froze. There was something behind that tired gaze. Not rage. Not panic. Something older. A depth that had seen men die slow and quick, up close and far away. Something that remembered the smell of black powder the way most men remember the smell of bread. Jake Morrison, who'd laughed while 12 men bled in dust over the years, felt a strange tug in his gut. Doubt. A whisper that maybe this ragged stranger wasn't a stranger at all. Maybe he was the sort of nightmare folks told stories about and hoped they'd never meet. Something they had just stirred awake. Something that had retired from killing, but hadn't had killing retire from him. Before we ride further down this trail, partner, if this kind of frontier tale grips you, tip your hat to it with a thumbs up. And if you haven't joined our little campfire yet, hitch your wagon to the channel so you don't miss the next ride. Let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from. I love watching these Wild West echoes roll across distant countries. Now stay in the saddle till the end, because what's coming next might catch you off guard. Red Creek, Arizona Territory. September, 1888. The Last Drink Saloon watched the world go by. Teamsters dragging freight, cowboys between drives, drifters who needed a roof and a bottle. Every now and then, bad men as well. Today was one of those days. The Morrison gang rode in at high noon. 5 horses. 5 hats pulled low. 5 reputations that made decent folks close shutters. They carried rifles and wore pistols and moved like men who understood power in its simplest math, guns, numbers, and the will to use both. Out here, that was enough to pass for law. In his usual corner, at his usual table, sat Nathaniel Carson. He'd held that same spot for 10 straight years. Same chair. Same drink. Same habit of saying nothing. He came to Red Creek in '78, a man of 47 who decided the ledger was full. He'd hung his guns on a nail in a rented room, laid his hat on the floor, and told himself he was done with blood. Enough bodies. Enough smoke. Enough riding as a shadow. He wanted quiet. He wanted to be nobody. To be the old fellow in the corner whose name no one bothered learning. He'd managed it. For a decade, no one asked what roads he'd ridden or what ghosts he carried. No one looked twice at the slow-moving man with the stiff shoulders and the watchful eyes. No one thought to link him with stories traded along cattle trails and campfires. Stories of a pistol hand they called Ghost Carson. A man who'd put 47 men into the ground in 27 years. A shooter folks swore never missed, never waited, never left a witness above dirt. A figure men whispered about when the fire burned low. Sure he was long dead or never existed at all. Ghost, they called him, because he appeared, killed, and vanished again. A rumor. A legend. A shape in smoke. Not a flesh and blood man sitting 10 feet away, sipping whiskey and watching Martha Hayes carry glasses. He liked Martha. She reminded him of his mother, gone 4 decades now, and of something kinder than the trail. Martha had a way of treating everyone the same. Ranch hands with dust still on their boots, gamblers in polished vests, cowards, heroes, sinners, and saints. She poured their drinks and offered the same tired smile, day after day. Her decency nudged what was left of his. The town adored her. Nathaniel respected her. That respect, in the end, mattered more than any of them knew. Because when Jake Morrison wrapped his fingers around Martha's wrist and dragged her close, when he taunted her, made her flinch, made her afraid, something in that quiet corner shifted. Nathaniel Carson, who'd been just a man for 10 years, felt the old shape of another self uncoiling inside him. The ghost stretched. Reluctantly. Inevitably. Pour me another, crone, Jake snapped. And hop to it. Unless your bones are too rotten. Unless you're too useless to walk. She's doing what she can, a voice said. Low. Rough from disuse. Coming from the corner. Everyone turned. Nathaniel had pushed his chair back just a little. His gray beard, his worn coat, his lined face, nothing about him looked dangerous at first glance. Just another tired soul wasting the afternoon with a bottle. The gang saw an old man and nothing more. Threat level, 0. Did we ask your opinion, old-timer? Cole Brennan sneered. Did we invite you into this conversation? No, Nathaniel replied, not raising his voice. You didn't. But I'm giving it anyway. He shifted, turning his glass in his hand. Leave her be. Drink what you paid for. Move along. Easy way. Healthy way. Dutch Miller's laugh boomed through the room. He was built wide as a barn door and about as quick to think. Healthy, he echoed. You calling this healthy for you? Standing alone against 5 of us. That's not health, Grandpa. That's suicide. Nathaniel lifted his whiskey, swallowed, and let the burn roll down his throat. He remembered, not just in his mind, but in the small, precise movements of muscles that hadn't forgotten what they were born to do. 10 years of stillness hadn't erased 27 years of drawing and firing. Killing, he knew, was like riding. Once learned, it never truly left you. You could hang up the saddle, but your legs remember the horse. I'm not warning you, he said at last, rising to his feet. Each step from the corner to the bar was measured. There was nothing hurried or clumsy about him now. His movements tightened, sharpened, as if 10 years of dust shook off his bones one stride at a time. There's a difference, he continued. A warning is a maybe. A promise is a certainty. He reached the gang side, so close Jake could see the tiny white scars on his knuckles. "This is a promise," Nathaniel said. "You lay a hand on her again, you shame her again, you make her feel small one more time, you die. All 5 of you. On this floor. Today." He leaned in just enough for them to see that he meant every word. "That isn't a threat," he finished softly. "That's the future, if you choose it." Then he reached into his coat. The room tensed. Every eye tracked his hand. He didn't draw steel. He placed bullets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They landed on the bar like punctuation marks in a grim sentence. "One for each of you," Nathaniel murmured. "You can leave them where they are and walk out, or pocket them and see who they end up inside. Simple numbers. Simple outcome." The youngest of the gang, Billy Cross, stared at the little brass cylinders as if they were snakes. Something in the old man's stance tugged at a memory. The way his hands hung relaxed, yet ready. The way his eyes never stopped moving, counting spaces, angles, distances. "Hold up," Billy whispered. "Those hands, that way you stand." He swallowed. "You're him," he breathed. "You're dead," Nathaniel cut in. "Ghost Carson died 10 years back. Laid his guns down and vanished. Only man here is an old fool who drinks too much and minds his own business, unless somebody won't let him." He let that hang a moment. "Your decision," he added. "Walk out of this town. Leave the woman in this saloon behind you. Or make me wake what's better left buried. Make me remember how to kill. I'd rather not. Been 10 years trying not to. But I'll oblige if you insist." Jake studied him. 5 against 1. It should have been nothing. They put bullets into better odds before breakfast. Every instinct told him to scoff, to draw fast, to prove his power. But Billy had named something Jake had heard too, Ghost Carson. The myth. The wandering pistol whose count stopped at 47. And there it was again, coiled in the old man's posture. Not arrogance. Not bluff. Just cold assurance, the kind that comes only from doing the same terrible thing over and over until it no longer shakes your hand. "You're bluffing," Jake said. But his voice ticked at the edges. His finger stayed away from his revolver. "Too old. Too slow," he insisted. "Then see," Nathaniel replied, calm as a man commenting on weather. "Draw. Find out if age means what you think it does. Find out if 10 years of quiet wiped away everything before. I'm curious myself." A ghost of a smile crept across his lips. It wasn't friendly. It was the thin, joyless smile of a man who knew exactly where every shot would land. Nobody moved. No one in the room breathed. Deep down, each of them understood. Reaching for a gun now wasn't a test. It was choosing death. For the first time in his life, Jake Morrison picked survival over pride. "We're riding out," he said, raising both hands slowly from his belt as he eased away from the bar. "No fuss. No fight. Just stepping outside." "Is that enough for you?" he asked. Nathaniel didn't answer. He just watched. 30 years had taught him that men who promised to leave sometimes tried for a shot on the way out. They'd pretend to retreat, then twist and fire, thinking surprise could outpace skill. 47 dead men had proven otherwise. He tracked them with his eyes as they backed out of the saloon, hands well clear of their holsters. The crowd parted for them, the whole room holding one long breath, waiting for the sudden crack of gunfire that never came. They stepped onto the street. Sunlight swallowed them. No one followed. Red Wade, the youngest, hot-headed, too proud to live long, let his fingers twitch toward his revolver butt, just to feel it there. "Don't," Nathaniel said. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't bark it as a command. He spoke it like he was stating a fact the way a man might say. "That canyon is deeper than it looks. Don't make me chase you," he went on. "Don't turn walking away into running. Don't turn running into burying. Just go. Let me stay what I've been. Let what I was stay dead." Red's hand hung there, hovering between ego and sense. For once, sense won. His fingers eased off the grip. He followed the others out into the day. The door swung shut behind them. The room let out its breath in one long sigh. Shoulders dropped. Martha's knees wobbled as if someone had cut the strings holding her up. Men who'd been ready to dive for cover loosened their grip on chair legs and bottles. No blood on the floor. No bodies. Nathaniel returned to his corner. He lowered himself into his chair and reached for his glass, and only then did anyone notice his hand shake. Not from fear, but from the ragged relief of a man who'd just dodged a storm he knew exactly how to ride through. He looked at the 5 bullets left on the table. Unfired. Unspent. A line they all knew shouldn't be crossed again. The town understood now. The quiet old man in the corner wasn't just an old man. He was a story they'd heard in pieces and never believed. A legend who'd chosen, just this once, not to live up to his own reputation. He'd given a warning instead of a lesson. Mercy instead of proof. Maybe, he thought, maybe the past could stay buried after all. Martha came to him later, eyes wet, hands still trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. They would have hurt me." "They're gone," he said gently, the hard edge gone from his voice. "That's the part that matters." He stared at the door a moment longer. "They won't be back," he added. "Not soon. They'll talk instead. Word will travel, Ghost Carson's sitting in Red Creek." Men like that don't like riding toward a legend they've already tested and lived through. Not twice. Martha swallowed. "Who are you, really?" "Nobody," he answered. "Just an old man who drinks whiskey and minds his own business. That's all I've tried to be for 10 years. That's all I want to be. A customer who pays on time and causes no trouble." He glanced at her with tired hope. "Think the town can forget what happened? Think I can get back to being invisible?" "Yes," she said, lying in the kindest way a person can lie. "Give it time. Folks will move on." She knew better. Nathaniel knew better, too. In small places, stories don't fade, they grow. The old man in the corner had turned into a living legend the moment he set those bullets down. People would talk. Men in other towns would listen. Someone would come looking, sooner or later. Peace, he knew, never lasted. He finished his drink and considered the 5 bullets again. He left them there on the table, a little shrine to the choice he'd made. Not in the chambers of his gun, but out in the open where anyone with eyes could see them. A warning to every stranger who might mistake gray hair for weakness. 5 gleaming reminders that as long as he sat in that corner, the ghost wasn't entirely gone, just resting. Days passed. The Morrison gang rode out of Red Creek with their lives and their pride wounded in equal measure. That wound festered in Jake's heart until the infection of it turned to rage. 3 days later, they came back. Not to the saloon. To kill. Jake had thought long on the ride out. Ghost or not, the moon was old. Alone. Outnumbered. Legends aged like anybody else. Surprise, numbers, and distance could kill what a fair draw might not. They spread out around the last drink as twilight smudged the town's edges. 5 rifles. 5 angles. 5 lines of sight covering every door and window the old man might use to go home. Wait for him to step into the open. Put rounds into him before he could take 2 steps. No gunfight. No showdown. Just a body in the dust and a legend reduced to a story about how time wins in the end. Inside the saloon, Nathaniel felt them. It wasn't anything he saw. It wasn't anything he could hear. It was the prickling sense a man gets after spending too many years walking into traps and walking back out of them alone. Danger. Close. Waiting. He stayed seated. Didn't tip his hand by going to the door. He let the feeling wash over him, then forced himself to breathe slow and think. Ghost had lived long by turning ambush into opportunity. He beckoned Martha close. "There are 5 men outside," he said, his voice low and steady. "They're settled in. Watching. They're not here for anyone but me." Her eyes widened. "What can I do?" "Leave," he replied. "Lock up like any other night. Don't rush. Don't look scared. Just close the door, walk home, and don't look back. They won't waste bullets on you. They only want their pride back." She hesitated. "And you? When you get home, put a candle in your window," he said. "That'll tell me you're safe. When I see that light, I move." He paused, the next words heavy on his tongue. "And when I move," he admitted, "I stop being a man trying to live quiet. I go back to who I was. To what I was. I go hunting. And this time, there won't be mercy." A shiver ran through her. Still, she nodded. "I'll do it." She walked out into the fading day like nothing was wrong. Turned the key, pocketed it, and strolled toward home. Eyes watched her from rooftops and alleys but let her pass. Jake and his boys weren't interested in killing a waitress. They wanted Ghost. When Martha's candle finally flared to life in the second-story window of her small house, Nathaniel pushed his empty glass away. The mun in the chair fell away, The weapon he'd been rose back to the surface. This wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was cold arithmetic. 5 men who'd had their chance and thrown it back in his face. Men who'd made it clear mercy hadn't taught them a thing. 47 was about to become 52. He slipped out the back, the way he'd planned from the day he first chose that corner table. 10 years he'd sat there mapping exits, alleys, sightlines, and rooftops. Ghost didn't settle anywhere without knowing how to survive leaving it. He'd already guessed where they'd sit. The north rooftop for a clear look at the front. An east alley for flanking. A south window over the street. And somewhere west, covering his usual route home. Men like Jake weren't imaginative, they were predictable. The first was Billy Cross. North side. Roof. Good vantage point, poor escape route. Nathaniel scaled the back of the building like a shadow. Old he might be, but his body remembered climbing in the dark with men below who'd shoot at the slightest sound. Billy never turned. Never heard the boots behind him. Never felt anything but sudden, white-hot pain as a knife slid between his ribs from behind, damming his voice in his throat before he could call out. He slumped. One down. East alley, Dutchmiller. He waited with his rifle held lazy across his chest, certain no one knew he was there. Nathaniel stepped in behind him, a shape blending with the deeper dark. A length of braided wire slipped smoothly over Dutch's head. By the time he realized what was happening, his hands were already clawing at his neck. His boots kicked against the dirt for a few useless seconds, then went still. 2 down. South side. Red Wade leaning in a second-story window, rifle braced, eyes on the saloon swinging doors. Nathaniel entered the building from a side entrance, padded up the stairs without making them creak, and opened the door on Red's back. The young gun was focused on the street, never considering death might come from behind. Nathaniel pressed his pistol to the back of Red's skull. Mercy was a mistake, he whispered. The shot sounded small in the narrow room, but it echoed outside. 3 down. Now the others knew. Cole Brennan and Jake heard the crack and felt the rows of their plan fall out from under them. They broke into a run, hearts hammering, legs pumping for the livery where their horses waited. Or thought they waited. Ghost had slipped the reins and slapped the animals off into the scrub before he ever began his hunt. There would be no fast exit. So they turned back toward town's edge with nowhere to go but straight into the dark, weapons drawn now, eyes straining, breath ragged. They chose to stand and shoot it out. It was the bravest choice of their lives. It was also their last. They faced the empty street, guns raised, looking for movement. They never saw the faint shift in shadow near the water trough. They only saw 2 quick flashes and felt the world jerk away from them. Cole took a bullet through the chest. Jake's throat vanished in a spray of red. They hit the dirt almost together. 48, 49, 50, 51, 52. 5 men who'd been given the chance to ride on and had turned back instead. 5 men who tried to kill a legend from the dark and proven why the legend existed at all. Nathaniel stood over them. He felt no triumph, no thrill, just that familiar hollow spreading inside. The emptiness that had followed each of the previous 47. The reminder that he was not built for peace, not wired for the quiet life he tried to claim. He dragged their bodies to a wagon with the tired efficiency of long habit, covered them with a tarp, hitched a horse, and waited in the pale light of morning for the law to come. Sheriff Tom Bradley rode up just after dawn, saw the wagon, saw the bodies, saw Nathaniel sitting on the tailgate with his hands folded in his lap. Ghost, Tom said. Not a question. He'd suspected for years. The way the old men in the corner watched every door. The way he always sat with his back to the wall. The way gunfire in town never brought panic to his eyes, only calculation. They set up an ambush, Nathaniel said, straight to the point. 5 of them. I warned them 3 days back. Told them to leave this town, leave Martha alone. They left. Then they came back with rifles and a plan. He gestured toward the wagon. I came out the back. They chose the game. I just played it better. Self-defense, Tom said quietly. By the letter of the law, Nathaniel nodded. But the law doesn't have to carry their faces. I do. He stared at the sheet covering the bodies. 47 was enough, he said. But now it's 52. I'm done here, Sheriff. Once word spreads, others will come. Young guns wanting to say they killed Ghost Carson. Old enemies wanting to settle scores. I won't let Red Creek turn into an arena for my past. Where will you head? Tom asked. Nathaniel shrugged. Somewhere else, he said. Anywhere they haven't heard my name yet. Far. Quiet. Maybe a place where legends die quicker than old men. If such a place exists. Tom studied him with something close to pity. Good luck, he said at last. They both knew luck had nothing to do with it. Reputation was a scent men like wolves could follow for miles. Once the territory believed Ghost rode again, there'd always be someone looking to ride faster. Nathaniel packed. He didn't have much. A second shirt. A blanket. His guns, freshly oiled despite 10 years on a nail. A handful of cartridges, including the 5 from that table, now fired. He went to see Martha one last time. She met him with red eyes and a brave smile. Thank you, she said, for standing up for me. For what you did. I'm no hero, he replied gently. I'm a professional killer trying not to be one anymore. 52 men aren't the marks of a savior. They're the tally of a weapon. That's all Ghost ever was, a tool that answered violence with more of the same. He sighed. I'm just an old man who'd like to stop being that tool before the end. To die as Nathaniel instead of as a story. You'll always be a hero to me, Martha said. She rose on her toes and kissed his cheek. You protected me. That's hero enough. He didn't argue. There was no point trying to untangle the difference between survival and saintliness in a world like theirs. He mounted up, turned his horse toward the horizon, toward a line of purple mountains and the red glow of evening. Behind him, Red Creek shrank. The saloon, the street, Martha's small house, they all blurred into one more town he couldn't stay in. Ahead of him stretched more of the same, new settlements, new corners to sit in, new attempts at disappearing, and, inevitably, new tests. Because once word spread that Ghost Carson still breathed, boys with quick hands and older men with old grudges would come sniffing around any place he tried to call home. He rode on anyway. 3 months later, he was in Silver Ridge, New Mexico territory. Different saloon. Different faces. Same corner table. Same whiskey. Same hope he told himself each time, that maybe this would be the town where no one looked at him twice. For 2 weeks, it almost worked. Then a former cavalryman stumbled in after too much drink, squinted across the room, and dropped his glass. I'll be damned, the man said. If that ain't Carson. The ghost from the campaigns. By the next evening, the whole town knew. The quiet stranger became the story in the corner again. The number 52 sprouted from whispers like weeds. What had been a man turned once more into a test. It didn't take long. 3 young guns tried him in the first month, boys hungry to carve their names into the legend by cutting his off. They all died. 53, 54, 55. Each one placed another stone on the weight pressing down inside him. He left Silver Ridge after that. Moved on. The pattern settled in like a rhythm he couldn't break. A new town, a fresh corner, a brief season of quiet. Then recognition. Then challenges. Then more bodies. Peace, he realized, wasn't something a man like him could retire into. It was something he might scrape a few days of between storms. Years rolled by. Nathaniel reached 65. His hair went whiter. His joints ached in cold weather. But his hand remained steady, his draw sharp enough that the young men who tested him never got to learn his age. 55 deaths ticked up to 73. 18 more faces in his sleepless nights. He thought sometimes about the kid from Silver Ridge, the one who'd walked up to his table with desperation in his eyes. Teach me, the boy had begged back then. Men are coming. Bad men. They killed my family. They're coming for me next. I need to be fast enough to meet them. I need someone like you. Nathaniel had tried to turn him away. Lessons like mine come with a price, he'd warned. You pay in sleep. You pay in peace. You pay in how many graves you walk by with your name carved invisible on the headstone. But the boy hadn't backed down. Better a haunted man than a dead one, he'd said. Better a killer with a chance than a victim in the dirt. Just give me enough to stand. 1 week, Nathaniel had agreed. 1 week of brutal drilling, stance, draw, aim, fire, reload. How to use doorways. How to read eyes and shoulders. How to count opponents and exits in the same glance. He'd poured 3 decades of survival into 7 days. On the last evening, he'd given the kid one final truth. The first life you take will tear something in you, he'd said. The second won't rip as deep. By the 10th, you'll start feeling less. By the 20th, you'll be like me. And by the time you're where I am. He gestured vaguely at his own worn reflection in a bar mirror. You'll be followed everywhere you go by the ones you buried. They don't leave. They just stand a little farther back each time. So if you can, kill once and stop. Don't let it become who you are. Don't become Ghost. The boy had promised. They all did. Then he'd ridden out to meet his fate, and Nathaniel never saw him again. Dead or alive, the kid was gone, swallowed by the same West that had swallowed so many others. Nathaniel sometimes wondered if he'd saved a life that day or created another haunted one like himself. But wondering didn't change the tally. 73. Now he sat in yet another saloon, in yet another corner, watching yet another door. Still hoping each stranger who walked through it would be just that, a stranger, not a challenger, not a memory come back wearing a different face. He knew better than to trust that hope. Still, he clung to it. He wasn't ready to lay down and wait for age to do what bullets hadn't yet managed. Not while his hand could still find the grip without thinking. Not while his eyes still tracked the slowest movement in a crowded room. Some men, he'd learned, weren't allowed to retire. Their past followed them too closely. Their reputation drew too many tests. Ghost Carson was one of those men. He'd keep riding from town to town, from one lonely corner table to the next, until one of two things happened. Either his luck ran dry and a faster gun finally walked through the door, or his heart gave out before his hand did. Until then, he would go on existing, not quite living, breathing, but never at rest, carrying 73 shadows behind him like a cape no one else could see. If you've ridden all the way to the end of this trail with me, friend, my thanks. Stories like this, about a man who could never quite outrun what he'd done, have a way of sticking with you. If Nathaniel Carson's long, lonely road stirred something in you, I'd be mighty grateful if you'd tap that like button and hitch your wagon to this channel with a subscription. It helps these frontier tales find more ears across the world. Drop a comment and tell me which country you're listening from. It still amazes me how far these dusty little stories travel. Out here, a man can hang up his guns, but the life he lived with them doesn't always let go. Sometimes a handful of bullets laid on a table speaks louder than any speech. Sometimes the legends among us want nothing more than to fade away, and the world just won't let them. Pick your battles carefully, partner. Until the next trail, ride safe.